Hey, what is going on with y'all, man? It is Black Balloon, and I'm coming back with another video, so y'all already know what's going on. Alright, y'all. I figured we'd take a short break from the cloning series, and we go down another rabbit hole where we are discussing the meaning of the movie Sinners, right? Well, let me rephrase, because I haven't seen the movie. I'll probably wait until it comes out on streaming, not really pressed to go and see it in the movies, right? This video is more gonna be about, Robert Johnson's connection to this storyline, the inspiration that the director got, Ryan Coogler, from Robert Johnson, from the era of the early 1900s with the blues and hoodoo, voodoo, how everything was so magical, so spiritual back then, and how it all intertwined with the devil, rituals, invoking spirits, all kinds of stuff, right? This video is basically going to tap into that realm. So, this is, we're not, like I said, I haven't seen the movie, so we're not here breaking down the movie, but a lot of people were asking me to talk about the movie Sinners, right? And so when I came across the interview of the cast on, I think, Sirius XM, we are going to listen to Ryan Coogler actually talk about the inspiration, and he knows of the Robert Johnson story, basically the OG, the original 27 Club member, Robert Johnson, who is such a myth himself. We're gonna dive deep into it. I got a good article to read that shares the background of Robert Johnson as much as it is known, because it's all still shrouded in mystery of who he really was. I got a pretty, interesting theory of what I think happened with his life and how he got his musical talents. First off, there's a giant demon on his left-hand side right here in this photo. This photo just happens to be one of the most eerie photos captured that I've ever seen. I've never, this photo alone, we haven't even started the video. This photo is crazy. That is a giant demon to the left of him, like imprinted in whatever's behind him. I don't know if that's a curtain or what. It's like he's sitting on some kind of little stool, maybe, that has a little cloth over it. That is insane. When I saw this picture, just like, wow, there's a giant demon with eyes, a big forehead, nose, mouth. You can see it all. So it already lets you know, where this video is headed and the life of Robert Johnson, the original 27 Club member. I thought this would be a good breakup of the clone series. We go ahead and knock this video out, right? So I have two clips that I want y'all to hear that are from the cast members themselves, and they talk about the spiritual aspects of the film. Now, a lot of this stuff we are aware of. We've done extensive videos on method acting and actors basically summoning spirits to help them with their roles, from the greatest actors of all time down to people who are barely known, but they're just always around Hollywood films, whatever, right? We know about this stuff, and to continue to hear it and actually see that they got actual witches on set. They got actual people who practice hoodoo on set to help them with this stuff, and to have the real spiritual aspects of the film. Like, it's not faked, it's actually real. So to hear them actually talk about it, it just lets you know where the roots of this film comes from. And that's more of what we're going to get into with Robert Johnson. So thought this would be very interesting, y'all. We will go ahead and get into the clip from the director, basically his inspiration for creating the movie. Then we'll dive a little bit deeper into Robert Johnson, all right? So with that being said, y'all, check this out.
Hoodoo is a real practice, and we had a hoodoo consultant, and I spoke to hoodoo priestesses. So it is very much grounded and real and practiced, and I think he's really treated it with as much respect and honor as possible, because I do feel like the Western world media has kind of shown us like a really dark side of voodoo, and I didn't know it was such a healing, loving, spiritual, connected practice. I feel so empowered and inspired by the people I've met in my research. So yeah, she is very real, and that practice is very real. I guess the thing that isn't real is the vampires.
So Ryan Coogler, I'm curious to see, this film centers is rooted in so much religion and folklore and music and all this intertwine of the supernatural. I'm just curious, what was it about this time period that captured you so much that you wanted to explore?
Such a great question, bro. I have to start with how I came to know the genre of music that we refer to as blues music, specifically Delta blues music. I had an uncle named James Edmonds, and he was my Uncle James. He was the oldest male member of my family. You know, as I got into adulthood, I'm from Oakland. I was born in Oakland, but eventually my parents bought a house in a city called Richmond, which is a few miles down the road. And my Uncle James had moved to Richmond like right after us, you know. So I would be at his house all the time, and I really enjoyed, you know, just kind of sitting up under him when he get off work. And he would play, he would either watch a San Francisco Giants game on the TV, or if the game wasn't televised, he'll listen to it over like a little radio, and he'll put blues records on and drink Old Taylor whiskey. And that was the only time he would talk about Mississippi. You know what I mean? Any other time he wouldn't really reminisce. And the stories he would tell were really cool, oftentimes really crazy and dangerous, you know. But I you know, I had a lot of love for my uncle, man, and he passed away in 2015 while I was doing post production on Creed, and when I got the news that he died, I was in a post production facility in Los Angeles. I felt so far and disconnected from home that it really kind of broke me, you know. So I never really reckoned with missing him properly. You know, I went back home for the funeral, but I would often find myself putting on those old blues records to remind myself of him. And it would almost be like I was conjuring him. Like if I listened to it long enough and closed my eyes, I could feel him like kind of listening along with me, maybe telling me a story again. So when I got this idea to make this movie, I wanted to dive into like what Mississippi was, what that Delta blues music was, what was it about that region. And when I investigated it, you know, that this time, you know, like the late 20s, early 30s, was really like that time when it really took off. You know, the blues as we know it, and a lot of mythology, a lot of spirituality, you know, a lot of the supernatural vibe is right there in the music. Yeah. A lot of these musicians had songs about being haunted by the devil and being chased by their worst nightmares and trying to escape certain things, both natural and supernatural. One of the more famous tales is the tale of Robert Johnson, who went to the Crossroads and
Hellbound, right?
Well, he had a song called Hellhounds on My Trail. Yeah, and he had Me and the Devil Blues is the famous one. Yeah. You know, but the legend had it that he went to the Crossroads. He wasn't that good of a guitar player. Went to the Crossroads one night, and you know, in Western concepts, I said the devil came to him and tuned his guitar for him for the price of his soul. And he came back playing better than anybody had ever heard. As I researched, I learned that it wasn't necessarily the devil, but it was a figure named Papa Legba, you know, who's a African deity. And you know, once I unlocked that, it became fascinating for me, and I learned that this contribution, man, like the Delta blues, is really like America's greatest contribution to global popular culture. You know, and at that time, in that place, it was very hard to be black and be seen as a human being, you know. And through that affirmation, they gave the world a gift that you know continues to give, and it gives internationally. So with that, I kind of was like, man, I gotta make this movie big, man. That's why we shot it on IMAX cameras. I got the biggest movie stars I could find, you know, the best young talent to play Preacher Boy. Leveraged all my personal relationships that I had amassed over the years, relationships like with Mike, relationship like with my wife, Zenzi Coogler, who's a producer, and Ludwig Göransson, who's our composer, he got his wife into it. We laid it all on the line for the movie to kind of deliver this story in the biggest, boldest way possible.
He really put it out there as straightforward as it could be, with the Delta Blues, Mississippi, the supernatural, Robert Johnson, Papa Legba, who he supposedly met at the Crossroads, really gave you the inspiration behind making the movie Sinners and inviting, the voodoo, hoodoo practitioners and so on set to really capture that supernatural, or, get as close to it as they can. Because the more you research this stuff, and, around that time in the 1930s with the start of the blues and so on, we already know who runs the music industry. It's basically Satan's music. We know he's an angel of music. So, it's very founding of any particular genre, is, in a sense, you could say, blessed by Satan. And these early blues artists, Robert Johnson and so on, and even the guy that he learned from, they were into the black magic, into the rituals, into hoodoo, just as much as anyone is today, or the people who have used those spirits and the crossroads to gain fame or gain the talent to become famous, right? Now, what I wanted to do was just go over a little background of Robert Johnson, get to know him a little bit more, and we'll also talk a little bit about Papa Legba, since it is rumored that that is who he met at the Crossroads to sell his soul to the devil. Now, we've talked about Papa Legba on this channel because I did a couple of videos with American Horror Story. Remember, they featured the character Papa Legba in the Coven season. I think it was season 3, if I'm not mistaken, and it was called Coven, and Papa Legba was, the medium between the spirit and physical world, right? So it says Robert Johnson was one of the greatest blues musicians who've ever lived, but not much is known about the man whose unique playing style and imaginative lyrics influenced generations of music icons from B.B. King to Bob Dylan to the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. A whiz on the guitar, Eric Clapton said that when he first heard a Johnson recording, I realized that on some level I had found the master. His brief life and mysterious upbringing fueled the legend that he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for his talent. The public has only ever seen 2 confirmed pictures of Johnson, and most of what we know about him comes from scant historical records and oral history. But did Robert Johnson really make a deal with Satan to gain his gift? And it's crazy because this is one of the 2 confirmed photos of the Delta Blues King, Robert Johnson, and he has a giant demon next to him. Just one of the 2. When I was going over this stuff and him being such a mystery, I was almost thinking that this guy was like, I don't know, very supernatural himself. I almost thought that it was bigger than him just selling his soul, but he may have been like some kind of, reincarnation of some kind of deity spirit. Maybe he was possessed the entire time. Maybe he's like a product of the spirit world of, these spirits and deities that run with Satan. I don't know, but his history being so shrouded in mystery, and there only being 2 verified photos of him. One of the photos has a giant demon in it. I mean, he looks a little weird. I don't know. A piece of me just, I don't know. I just think him and everything about the story is just very supernatural. It's eerie. It's dark. But I almost wanted to say that, like, this guy was, I don't know. I almost don't want to call him human. Like, I just get a weird vibe from reading all of this stuff, and how when he played the guitar in front of a lot of people, he would play in a corner. He didn't want to show his hand movements. you know, I don't know, as if like he's just possessed, you know, like, but deeper than being possessed, if y'all understand what I'm saying. I don't know. This one is hard to touch, but this photo is also a photo that is confirmed to be him. Just two, y'all. We only get two. Now it says not much is known about Robert Johnson's early life, though some facts have come to surface in recent years. We know now that he was born Robert Leroy Johnson in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, sometime in May 1911. He was born out of wedlock after his mother, Julia Major Dodge, had an affair with a field hand named Noah Johnson. Julia's husband, a successful farmer and carpenter named Charles Dudd, fled town before Johnson was born on account of his sharing a mistress with an Italian businessman named Joseph Marchetti. 3 black men had already been lynched in Hazelhurst that year, and Charles Dodds didn't want to be the 4th. Disguising himself as a woman, Dodds escaped to Memphis, Tennessee, leaving Julia destitute. Most of her 10 children followed their father to Memphis, and soon after she had Robert. When Robert Johnson was 7, his mother remarried and moved him to Robinsonville, Mississippi. Reluctant to pick cotton, Johnson instead turned to the guitar and the diddley bow, a string nailed to the side of a shack with a glass bottle nestled in it as a bridge. The diddley bow was his introduction to music making. Now, it does say that Robert Johnson included many references invoking spirits and the devil in his songs, which fueled the myth of his bargain with Satan. And I think that's one of the songs that they brought up in that interview, Hellhound on My Trail. Now, what's even crazier is Robert Johnson was married. His wife's name was Virginia Travis, or Travis Virginia. Says as the baby's due date approached, Travis left their home in northwestern Mississippi for her childhood home in Penton, so her family could help care for the newborn. Johnson followed her, but he made stops along the way to perform his music. By the time Robert Johnson arrived at Travis' house, which was his wife and his child had already been buried. Both had died during a difficult birth. And his wife's family blamed Robert Johnson's devil music on the death of his child and his wife. He was only 19 years old at the time, and that is what really got him back into doing the music. Now, Robert Johnson ended up dying in 1937, August 16th, at 27 years old. So for us, we know him as the first member of the 27 Club. And so that is pretty much the story you get around Robert Johnson. His music told the tales that he was definitely, heavily involved in hoodoo. Whatever he learned, about being able to go to the Crossroads, sell your soul. I mean, it's not hard to imagine because of the time he existed in, the area he existed in, the music he was starting to create, and they were already very spiritually aware. They knew how to contact spirits, contact the devil to actually get what they want. Maybe he was someone who was willing to do things others was not willing to do. Maybe he was already, some kind of demon spirit. Maybe this man was already born from the dark side. I don't know. The stories like this, it takes my imagination very far because I just don't see it being. It's kind of hard for me unless he had people around him and he knew things about this stuff, black magic, so on and so on, or how to contact the devil, or he just knew someone he could go to and point him in the right direction. It's so much mystery. It just makes you think, the worst, or it makes you think, this was a lot deeper than just him selling his soul at the Crossroads or somehow contacting Papa Legba, and Papa Legba assisted him in being able to sell his soul. Now, I won't read too much on Papa Legba because, we pretty much know what's going on, right? Now, it says Papa Legba is the gatekeeper between the human and spirit worlds, and no human can reach the other spirits without Papa Legba's permission. At the spiritual crossroads, Papa Legba decides whether a person is allowed to speak with other spirits. Believed to speak all human languages, Papa Legba is known to the Haitians as the Great Elocutioner or Public Speaker. Papa Legba's fluency in all languages is a facet of his story that is intrinsically tied into the history of the land from which his legend originated. Though his story began in West Africa, it found its way to Americas when European settlers brought enslaved people to the New World, including the Caribbean. Though some of the slaves' spiritual beliefs differed, they eventually mixed together, bringing a sense of commonality and community. Now, this photo is supposedly a depiction of Papa Legba in Togoville, Togo. I'd have to say, this is no pretty picture. I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. I almost don't even feel comfortable looking at this because I don't know what this is. This is crazy. Now, just some last little bits. It says Papa Legba is traditionally depicted as an old man, dressed in rags and smoking a pipe. He often needs to lean on a crutch or cane to walk. While he may appear frail and weak at first glance, he is actually one of the most powerful spirits in the voodoo tradition. He only walks with a limp because he inhabits two worlds at once, the human realm and the spirit realm. The cane that he leans on is not an ordinary cane. It is said to actually be the gateway between the human world and the heavens. It says that not only does he speak all languages of the world and the languages of the spirits. Think about that. This is like, very fascinating stuff. It says he's a mediator. He alone opens the door to let all the other spirits into the human world. Therefore, many ceremonies begin with an offering to Papa Legba, so he will keep the door open and let the other spirits into the world. Although he commands respect, he is seen as a mostly benevolent, fatherly figure, and it does not take much to appease him. He is not a very demanding spirit, but he is sometimes depicted as a trickster who is fond of riddles. He also likes to deal with uncertainty and confusion. Sometimes his messages can be distorted or misunderstood. It says he's a messenger. He's the guy. He's the spirit to go to for contact to the other world. And it says without him, the door to the spirit world would remain closed to every person trying to communicate with those in the heavens. Crazy, crazy stuff right here, y'all. This picture is insane. I don't even know. Whoa. Like, whoever drew this, if they saw him some way, my goodness. I didn't want to keep that on the screen too long. And look at this one. Whoa. Yo, this is insane. Crazy stuff right here, especially with the Papa Legba thing, man. It gets deep. It gets deep. And like I was saying about Robert Johnson, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. The story is so mysterious. Only 2 confirmed photos of the man. I don't know. I just think he was very much involved in magic, the spirit world. Like I said, it could be as far as him even being something himself and not just all human. I don't even know, y'all, at this point. Or, hey, maybe he just got word on how to contact Papa Legba and, he met them spirits and he did what he did. But, man, you got to be some kind of person to go stand in the middle of the crossroads and invoke some spirits. You have no idea what they will do to you. They must really know how to make it happen and do it safely. But just like they said, Papa Legba is not a very demanding spirit, so it seems like, you know, if you got a couple things for him, you know, some coffee, some tea, he gonna hook you up with who you need to talk to and make it happen. I don't know, y'all, man. So look, we'll go ahead and end it right here. Y'all definitely let me know what y'all think about this video, man. Thought it'd be cool to just go ahead and split up the cloning series for a quick second. I definitely got another video on that topic, you know, the cloning topic, coming for y'all in the next couple days. So with that being said, it's Black Balloon, and I'm gonna see y'all soon. I'm out.